Limitation of liability. So limitation of liability is what? It is you do some damage to me. I'm incurring a loss. So you would like to limit that to a certain number. That is what limitation of liability clause is. It's more on passing of the check, right? So let me read that for you. Limitation of liability clause says that if one party injures the other, it's not liable for the full damages. That is where limiting is coming. Limitation of liability can be hard to swallow. That's a fact. In fact, courts will not enforce this clause if it thinks that the customer has not understood this clause. Yeah, that's why limitation of liability usually stands out printed in capital letters. Go on any website policy today and see the limitation of liability clause. As soon as you see something appearing in caps letters, all of a sudden in that contract, which may appear as TNCs, you just know it's the limitation of liability clause. Why it is known as limitation of liability? Because it's not taking the whole liability, the entire damage on itself. Yeah, it is limiting it to a certain extent. The vendor wants to establish that if the customer didn't understand the clause, recognize its importance, it's the customer's fault. That is why it's in big caps words. Vendor should not take other precaution to increase the chance of enforcement. Limitation of liability clause comes in two flavors. One is dollar capping. Dollar capping is where I give you are my vendor, I'm hiring you for certain services, and the entire project for a year is say for 2 crores. I'm a big brand, right? I know that if you do something wrong as my brand agency for the services that I'm procuring, it could lead to 20x times of what I'm paying you in a year. So here, the limitation of liability is a very highly negotiated clause where the vendor will say, hey, suppose I am not that rich or I do not have that much of revenue that if you claim 20x, I'm going to pay you off, right? If something like that happens, maybe I can pay the maximum extent of what the money you might be paying off to me in a year. Yeah, even if that happens in 6 months, I'm ready to pay off the money which you might pay to me as my fee for a year. So this is very highly negotiated, and this is what is known as the dollar capping and limitation of liability. Yeah, you should always negotiate this clause for your clients. If you, on whichever side you are, you have to play it very skillfully. Okay. Most contracts, and the other one is the exclusion of consequential damages. Consequential damages are not direct damages. So limitation of liability deals with anything which you do directly. Yeah, indemnity is covering your third party. Limitation of liability covers your direct damages. The simplest part of limitation of liability clause caps the party's liability at a dollar figure. That is what is known as dollar capping, where you are limiting it by way of numbers, by way of money, yeah, by way of dollars. Yeah, dollar. That is why it's a dollar. It is not that it has to be always in dollars. It can be in the currency of the country that you're dealing with, but that is how it is known as dollar capped limitation of liability. So that's how it reads like. Vendor's liability arising out of or related to this agreement will not exceed this amount of dollar. Vendor's liability arising out of or related to this agreement will not exceed the annual licensing. Yeah, that's how it will read. Let's move ahead. Limitation of liability, exclusion of consequential damages. That's why IT vendors generally insist on limiting them. Obviously, a dollar cap would also prevent liability for much of the money at stake in a consequential damage claim. Yeah, let's move ahead.